Hola! Hey, Nasir, you made it first. Congrats. Hi, Samuel. So, tonight's gonna be probably shorter than last night. Pretty tired, to be honest with you. Uh, and I guess that's kind of the point of a live stream, is you get the raw, unfiltered artist. And, yeah, so I'm gonna be raw and unfiltered tonight. Going back to doing some sculpting on the Heather bust. Since I'm doing a lot of raking with the clay, I like to have a little cookie tray here to catch all the crumbles so it doesn't end up on my lap and then ground into my pants and then on the couch and then in my bed. And eventually it makes its way into my food somehow. I don't know. It's not good. Keep your crumbs contained, people. Hey, Honky Tonk Toodle Snoot. That is a fantastic name. Woo-wee! Kajit, welcome back. Yeah, Nasir beat you. He was first. You are now, like, 4th place, Kajit. How you feeling, though? Feeling any better? Can't remember. Were you recovering from a surgery? You're out of work for some reason. Let me know how that's going. Kajit, you are doing stop motion. Wow, I did that for about, how long did I try to do that? If you ever saw the show Parks and Rec, one of the characters on there ends up, I believe he's out of a job, and so he's at his house for a long time and he starts doing stop animation as a hobby. And it kind of shows him this montage of him working on it, and it seems like it's been forever. And then he shows his work to his best friend, and it's like literally, I don't know, like half a second of total animation. And that really busted me up because that was pretty much exactly my experience. I was like, man, the bang to buck ratio on that art form is so low. You have to be super passionate about it. Turns out I was not that passionate. Although I do love, I love the art form. Big fan of, what's that studio that's still doing it? Down in Portland. Can't remember the name. Their last one was Kubo and the 2 strings or whatever, and before that they did Box Trolls. Nasir, I collect a lot of figures and sculptures too. Figurines and toys. You should see my... I just recently put away a box, well, probably 2 or 3 massive boxes, and a suitcase, come to think of it, full of Spawn toys from the 90s. You know, those McFarlane toys? I had way too many of those. Let's see, is that in focus? Yeah. I forgot my reference. Alright. Prepare for about 45 seconds of silence. Sorry, guys. Alright, I'm back. Reference is so super important. So here's the problem areas I'm currently dealing with this particular sculpture. Right now it's the eyes. They are really bugging out right now. I had them like super detailed before. I squashed them down and redid a lot of the anatomy around the eyes and the forehead, and then I started detailing them again. You know, not super detailed, but enough to get a sense for them. And now they just look totally wonky. Hi, Adrena? Is that how you say that, Adrena? Welcome. Nasir wants to know if I've ever thought of making an action figure with articulations and joints. Yes, very much I've thought about that. The closest I came is I made a Link action figure for my son for his birthday quite a while ago, back before there was a really good articulated Link action figure. I bought a set of joints. Actually, let me grab that real quick. You know, see, I got these really cool ball joint sets. I think it's one of those things where I felt I had a particular idea, I was going to do something, and then I kind of discovered a different way to do it that was faster and easier. So these have been sitting around for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised if I use them at some point. Alright, so when you got something that's not working, you gotta be brave and you gotta just squish it. Start over. And just know that's part of the process and it's totally okay. Hi, Hero Apollo. You're welcome for all the help. It's fun. I really like, I guess teaching is what this is. I don't feel like it's teaching. I'm not developing a curriculum per se or anything, but I'm just like, hey, this is how I do things. And oh, you guys can't see the reference at all. Let's see. I'm gonna move my face down here. There we go. Now you can see the reference. Adrena, you're asking like what went wrong with the sculpture? If that's what you're asking, the answer is I'm just not quite masterful enough to be able to nail all the forms and proportions right off the bat. So a lot of my time is spent in essence kind of randomly flailing at the clay, and after I've accumulated enough happy accidents where it's starting to get to the point where it's looking like it, then I can start dialing it in. But yeah, it's definitely a lot of process of trial and error, and just being comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with maybe that's a bad thing to say. Maybe it's not. I'm comfortable with my skill level in that I know I'm not like a fantastic artist who can just do whatever I want. And so I'm comfortable enough to both admit that and then to work that into my schedule, my expectations about what I'm going to be doing. It doesn't stop me from trying to do stuff that's beyond my skill level. That's the only way you grow, is you try to do stuff that's harder than what you currently are able to do. But then you just have grace with yourself when you're not able to achieve whatever your vision was, I guess. Had some schmutz on my tool. Don't quote me on that. So I think one of the tricky things with trying to get this expression that I'm trying to capture is that when a person's eyes are looking in, well, any direction, they pull the eyelids because an eyeball has that cornea that sticks out, a decent amount of bulk in that cornea, and so it pulls all the muscles and the eyelids kind of in a direction, so it's a little blobby in that sense. And so I'm kind of gesturing at where the blob of that cornea will be when once I put the eyelids and stuff in. And I think that's what's kind of slowing me down right now, is I'm having to project like a chess master or something 20 moves down the road. Once I get the eyelids and everything in, is that going to be the right spot? I don't know. Now that I say that, what I should be doing really is just lightly drawing eyelids on every couple of squashes to get a sense for it. I could almost make a stamp of the eye and then just like go boop, boop every time. I don't know if it's worth it at this point, but probably the next bust I do, I may try that. Andrea says, hard to tell without a side view of the reference, but it looks like the sculpt's eyes are inset a tad more than the photo. Yeah, you could be right about that. I do have a side view right there. And see, that's another thing that's throwing me off, is her eyes actually curve way down, like kind of Britney Spears eyes a little bit. But then in other photos of her face, well, it doesn't help that she's not looking in the same direction in this photo. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have any of her profile where she's looking in that side. Nasir says, has a question. Do you sculpt digitally? And if you do, what's the point of sculpting 3D before going to clay? Yeah, I was actually just talking about that a couple nights ago. Here's a 3D print that I've been cleaning up with traditional, well, not traditional, with this stuff. This is epoxy sculpt. And, oh, let me hold it up where you can see it. Epoxy sculpt. Because I got them, like, this piece is printed at kind of a medium resolution, and this one's printed at a super high resolution. and there's just always some bit of cleanup to do as far as the little lines on there and stuff. I'll give you a sense for how detailed that is. So yeah, you can see like the little logo that I put on this belt buckle, like, turned out really pretty crisp. I actually put like little tiny runes and stuff on all of these tiny little dots that there's just no way you could possibly see it. You know, it could never print out, and even if it did print out, it'd be too small to see anyway. But yeah, so when it comes to deciding if I'm going to do something digitally or traditionally, at this point in my life, it comes down to just thinking of how much time am I going to save for how much money it's going to cost. Because, like, I think this guy cost me about $80 to $100 to print. Oh, sorry, I'm out of focus again. So it's really comes down to a calculation of how much you think your time is worth to you at that point. I think, how long would it take me to sculpt this guy traditionally? And then I double that, and then I triple that, because that's really what it ends up being. So, whereas to do this guy digitally, I probably busted this out in, I don't know, 5 hours or less. Probably less. And like this thing is like the perfect example of when you want to do 3D printing if you can, as opposed to traditional modeling. Because to do all of these, like these are all the same shape, but they're slightly deformed. You know, the whole thing is kind of wedge shaped a tiny bit. And so I couldn't just like reproduce the same thing over and over and over with a mold or a stamp or something. It just made sense to do that digitally with you know, a symmetry tool, so you can just project them all. And yeah, anyway, hope that answers your question. Oh, that reminds me. Last night we were doing some stained glass paint stuff, and Pat still has not sent me the pictures of it, but I thought I'd show you the little test thing that we did on this, so you can get a sense for how opaque or transparent it is. Let me put something like this behind it, so you can kind of see, like, that was really thick. And the parts where it's super thick, it's probably too opaque. But you know, down here it was obviously thinner. You can see through it a lot better. But yeah, I'll still show pictures once he emails me those. My guess is he probably didn't actually finish it on time, so he's probably sweating bullets right now trying to finish. Khajiit, I've been doing a great job keeping this stream from crashing for no. Oh, it just says it's been only 2 minutes now. So apparently it did freeze up at some point. I don't know. I can't. I'm so bad at technical stuff, you guys. Okay, where was I? I was making an eyeball, looking up in this direction. And I might just have too much clay on there, so no matter how I shape it, it might just be too buggy, and I just have to scrape away some clay there. I'm not sure if that's the problem, or if the plane that the eye is on is too flat and needs to be tilted back a little bit. That's my guess, actually. Like, so like if it's like this, I might need to make it more like that, if you know what I mean by the main plane of it. But that fights what I'm trying to do, which is to bulge out that corner, because when the eye is looking in that direction, it bulges the eyelid and everything. So, come on. You can do this. Thank you. Zoom. Yeah, 3D printing being affordable is a thing I'm definitely looking forward to. I just put in an order today on shapeways.com for a bunch of playing figures for this game I'm working on for a tutorial. It's a board game, and there's 40. It's a 4-player game, and each player has 10 little gnomes, and so I sculpted those digitally, and printing those out was hundreds and I'm not even going to tell you how many hundreds, but it was more than 4 and less than 6, and that's really not something I should be spending that much money on ever. So yeah, once it's down to a reasonable price, once you can get like photoreal color and texture, and you're not seeing the little print lines, and it's like it's like the, not the holodeck, what's the replicators on Star Trek. Once it's like that and decently priced, that's when I'm going to buy one. I started telling this story on a live stream a couple days ago, just before I crashed, but it's kind of funny. When I was going to the Art Institute of Seattle, this was like 1995 or 96, they had one printer, one like photoreal color printer where you could, I'm talking two-dimensional printing now, where you could print an image that was as clear as a photograph, and that was just mind-blowing to everyone. And that printer cost thousands of dollars. It was ridiculous. We were allowed to use, I think it cost like several dollars for every print that we did. That was the student price. And now you can go to Walmart and get a photoreal printer for $80 or whatever, right? So that's what I'm hoping happens to 3D sooner rather than later. You can see in this two-dimensional image, the eye shape, it's so teardrop, right? It just like goes right down into that point. But when I try to replicate that in 3D, it ends up looking really weird. And it probably has to do with the lens on the camera and how grainy this picture is. I don't know what it is, but I'm not able to reproduce that shape in 3D. Yeah, Nasser, right now 3D printers for the home mostly do plastics and stuff, but I mean they're making ones that can do metal. I mean they're printing steel tools and stuff like that for industrial purposes. I assume it's only a matter of time before they can do other metals like bronze and stuff if they don't already. Where'd my good tool go? Have I gone anywhere that my tool would just disappear? No, it's right in front of my face. I'm sure that doesn't happen to any of you, right? Samuel, I'm sorry I don't speak Spanish or Portugal or Portuguese or whatever that is you are typing. No habla español. I'm going to lower the camera so you guys have a better angle on this. By that, I mean shut off the camera. How helpful is that? Let's see if I can fix that real quick. I'm getting better at fixing this quick. It's still not quite there yet. There we go. So yeah, you can get maybe a better idea of the shape of the eye that I'm trying to get there. White Devil, thank you for translating. He's asking how long I've been working on the head. I honestly do not remember the date I started this. I know it was more than 6 or 7 years ago. There's like these teeth here are the original Sculpey firm that I started working in, and they're very crumbly. Like parts of these lips, if I drag over them too hard, they'll kind of crumble apart. So it's not the ideal way to do things. Nasir says, I've seen someone who used glass eyeballs in their sculpture, so the eye is an actual eye, not painted on. Yes. That's a great reminder. I have some eyeballs. Let me see what happens when I pop them in. I'm hesitant to use these eyes because they're not the perfect color. Her eyes are kind of gray-blue with a little bit of green. And also this is the really annoying thing, is most eyes for dolls and such have like really oversized irises. So that's annoying when you're trying to make a real person. But you know what the heck, let's see how it works. This won't hurt a bit, dear. Ow! Perfect, you like it the way it is? Beautiful. And done. White Devil asks, I have a personal technical question. I started following you when I found your tin video tutorial. Did you cover the baking process of Sculpey Firm? That was the last of that tin part, and I didn't show it. I just told you how to do it, which is pretty much put it in the oven. When the oven's off, you turn on the oven, and then after it's gone, it's the amount of time it needs to go depending on how thick it is. You just turn off the oven and don't remove it till the oven's totally cool, and that's the way you minimize cracks and stuff like that. Basically, you just don't want it to heat up or cool off quickly. Undead elf woman. Yep. Don't think this eyeball is actually quite big enough. So this bust is half scale, and if I recall, a human eyeball is approximately 1 inch in diameter. Although these certainly do look like they're half an inch, don't they? Yeah, these are actually over half an inch. These are like 3/4 of an inch. Am I wrong about how big a human eye is? Or is this sculpture just so bad that putting an appropriately sized eyeball ruins it? That's a good question. Samuel asks, why is it so difficult to learn Spanish? Also, I found it difficult to study Spanish. Well, from what I understand, it's probably the easiest language for an English speaker to learn. And I've always wanted to learn it. I've gone so far as buying Spanish learning materials. And I just never got around to it. I was too busy sculpting or learning other stuff. I guess because there's no like direct immediate need for me to know it. I don't know. That's one of the things I hate about myself the most, is being monolingual. It's just so pedestrian and mundane. You think the eye looks cool in this here? Well, I'll certainly grant that it looks cooler than the crappy lump that I had there before. Ah, that didn't work. Undo! Undo! So the bottom, yeah, I think this iris is just too big. No, I'm not going to remove the eye yet. I've not fully investigated this option yet. See, at this angle, her eye goes like the bottom eyelid looks like a straight line almost, and then the top is like super arced. But I know that's because of the angle of her face. And I mean, if you lay a flat line over anything round, it's going to get those curves depending on the angle that you see them at. So, feel like now I've got a big wasteland between the corner of the eye and the bridge of the nose. Which could be right, I just don't have the right volume built in there. Lynn, you thought German was closer to English than Spanish? I've not heard that. I've definitely heard from multiple people because German and Spanish, I think, are probably probably French and Spanish, and then German are the most common kind of languages to be taught in high schools in the U.S. And so I know a lot of people who have had all of those, and everyone I've talked to says Spanish is definitely the easiest. But I suppose that could be very subjective. Nasir asks, can you share some of the sculpting techniques that didn't exist when you started and now make your life easier? I don't think there's any new techniques that have been invented since I started. There's been some new materials, like this epoxy sculpt stuff, which is super awesome. And obviously 3D printing is new. As far as techniques that I've learned personally, I think probably the biggest breakthrough for me would be two things. Would be the rake, for smoothing down the overall forms, and then the other one would be smoothing whatever clay you're working with. When you're working with Sculpey, you can use alcohol, denatured alcohol. When you're using wax, you use something different. When you're using monster clay, you're using something different. When you use wet clay, I think it's just water for that. But the idea that you can go in and do like a really craggly texture like that, and then just use a paintbrush with some wetness on it and smooth it down, and it looks really awesome. That is huge. Let me show you a sculpture I did before I knew about that. This pretty lady right here is called an oot, and all of the texture that I did on her, I did by, moving my tool like that and then going along the same line at a different angle. So I was making all these V-shaped grooves by tracing 2, 3, sometimes 4 times over every single one of these little these little folds and wrinkles. And it's just a ridiculous way to do things. I didn't know. It was before the internet. It was before people were sharing information really freely. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm so motivated where I am right now to share all this stuff, because it can be shared and I could save people so much heartache, Yeah, I'll show you real quick. I've got some alcohol here. Thought I had some alcohol. Oh, is that it? Yeah, so if you just, I mean, normally you would put some of this alcohol in a little container, and then, so say I wanted to do that same kind of texture that was on the oot's leg there. You can do it just really fast by just scrying these lines in. You're practically just scribbling. In fact, I just got, let me see if I can find it. I just got this. This is pretty much just hard, wiggly wires stuck in a stick. And you can just move it across the clay like crazy. Right. Get rid of most of that stuff and then brush it down with the alcohol. And that gets rid of all the little boogers and smooths all that stuff together. And so most sculpting materials have some kind of solution that you can apply to do something like this. Here, let me get you a close up. Over here, there we go. But yeah, you could get a sense for how you could do skin and scales and fur and stuff really fast that way. Nasir says, wow, so have this statue before the internet, like almost 15 years. Yeah, I made that statue back. I was working on a game. It was going to be a launch game for the PlayStation 2. And I was an art lead on that project. And so this would have been around 2000, maybe 1999. Okay, so technically the internet, yes, the internet did exist. There weren't people putting videos on there about how to sculpt. Let's just put it that way. Andy says, by sharing the process, it can help remove the stigma art has and show just how much skill and knowledge goes into pieces. Yeah, there's, I don't know if I'd call it stigma, but there's certainly so there's this weird thing where, like, I feel like half the people in the world don't understand, like, how artistic people are creative or have interesting ideas, and to them that's the big magical hurdle that you have to get over to be an artist. And then the other half they understand, duh, I could come up with mashing two things together and make a painting or a sculpture out of that. They don't, and they see that there's technical hurdles, like, how do you actually do that? So, yeah, I'd say there's two different ways that people don't appreciate, that non-artists don't appreciate art, and depends on who you run into, I guess, more often, where your perception will come from. For instance, Samuel asks, why do you like fantastic things? And I do not get the imagination. Now, I'm assuming there's a little bit of language barrier there, but I think the general intent is like, which I hear this all the time, basically, how do you come up with such wacky ideas? Like, where do your ideas come from? And I have a theory about creativity. I read a lot of stuff about brain science. I find brain science and psychology really interesting. But the stuff that I've read about the science of sleep and dreams and stuff like that, it's basically like the logic gate of your brain shuts down, but the content generation part stays active. And so without the logic gate to translate that stuff or impose a logical narrative on the ideas, it just kind of runs wild, right? So that's when you're having those crazy dreams. And my guess is that creative people, that logic gate is they're able to kind of control it more than other people maybe, so they can let out a certain amount of creativity when they want to. Because to me, creativity is juxtaposing different ideas in interesting, coherent ways. So there's randomness, where you could just like pull two words out of a hat, like tin can and lizard, and you could say, okay, I invented a tin can lizard. And it's like, well, okay, that's a thing, I guess. But then coming up with a way to make that coherent and interesting and compelling to people, that's real creativity to me. So that was a lot of blathering about a very simple question. But I mean, the real answer is I don't know. I don't know how people are creative or where their ideas come from. Just have guesses. And I lost my tool again. This is not my tool. 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 Okay. I had to go through that process because last time I looked right at it like 10 times and didn't see it. And now it is true. Clever, hiding under the lip of the cookie sheet. Nostituadamus. No, is that like Nos 12 Adamus? Is that a play on Nostradamus? I don't know, but anyway, you're asking, did I go to art school? Yes, I went to a bad art school that I don't recommend people go to. I went to the Art Institute of Seattle. There were some teachers that were great and passionate, but the system itself, it's basically a diploma mill where all they care about is that they can get the government to cut them a check on your behalf, and then they just pipe you through the system, and they don't. It's not. Most art schools are pretty predatory, and you need to be really careful when you look into places to go to school. I basically paid $40,000 to learn one thing, which is a very important thing, and that one thing is do not accept your first idea. Just design past it and keep going and keep iterating, and you may end up going back to your first idea, but most of the time you'll find out that if you keep going, you come up with better stuff. If you spend that little bit of time and energy to keep developing your idea. Nos 12 Damas asked, what about a community college art program? Would I recommend that? I just don't know enough about it. I think when it comes to art training, it really comes down to the teacher. Like, if you can do an a la carte type of program where you are just learning specific things from specific teachers, like, that's the way to go. If you're paying for a college education, but you want to walk away with an art degree, I would guess community college is... What do you want your art degree for? That's the question. Every place that I know that hires artists, so I'm familiar with the film industry and the video game industry, and to a lesser extent graphic design. I know some people in graphic design and photography. And do any of those places care that you have a degree? 90%, if you are good at what you do, that's 90% of the job. There are a few places that will have like a stickler in the HR department that says, well, he doesn't have a degree in this, so why should we? If an art director or art lead who's hiring artists knows anything about their craft, they're going to hire you if you're good. My son is learning art, learning a lot of stuff from me, obviously, from the internet. He's learning about video editing, about game art, and I'm encouraging him to pick up as much as he can for free from the internet first, find out what he likes that way, get involved in art communities online, and you will get so much of what you would otherwise pay tens of thousands of dollars for at a college. That's just my personal opinion. That's just from my experience. I'm sure in lots of contexts that's really bad advice, but that's what I have to give. And you're talking about for a hobby, you don't plan on making money out of it. Oh, in that case, yeah, do not go to college. Do as much learning as you can online. There's so much stuff out there, so much great material. So many super helpful professionals. Like, there are people out there that make $100,000 a year doing art, and they will answer your question on the internet. You're on a Facebook forum with them, or you tweet at them, or whatever, and they're totally happy to answer questions. It's an amazing time we live in. It's so cool. Yes, Andy, it is totally fun researching, digging through videos. I mean, there is time investment there because there's also a lot of crap. There's a lot of really bad artists out there teaching bad practices, and you just got to kind of use your discernment and sort that out. Another great resource is that there's a lot of professionals out there who do local classes look up classes on virtually any kind of art, whether it's molding and casting or sculpting or life drawing or anything, and there's a community of people out there. Some of my favorite artists, like Jordu Shell, he does creature design for Hollywood, and I've taken a couple classes from him. I know a couple people who do bronze casting classes in my area, so if you live near a metropolitan area, I guarantee you there's that kind of stuff going on all over the place. Yeah, I think the eye, in isolation, the eye looks great. I think in context, it looks way too far out there. But then when I look at my reference photo, and I look at how close it is to the edge of the face, it's hard to tell because there's a little bit of a tilt there. I think I may just need to dig that out and move it closer. See how that looks. Nasir is asking, did I use a skeleton for this sculpture that I'm working on? I made a very basic, the proper word for skeleton for a sculpture, armature. Thank you. I used an armature just by wadding up really thick aluminum foil, and I think I drilled like maybe a stick in there and just wadded the foil around that and then built the clay over that. All right, we're almost coming up on an hour, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up in about 5 minutes. Like I said at the beginning, I'm awfully sleepy right now. I haven't been getting great sleep, and I'm going to PAX tomorrow night. That is the Penny Arcade Expo, for anyone who doesn't know. It's a big video game and geek culture convention here in Seattle. Samuel, your dog looks like a gremlin? Wow. That's cool. Well, it looks like my camera's done, so I'm going to go ahead and call it a night for tonight. And no stream tomorrow night, because like I said, I'm going to be at PAX. Maybe I'll do a stream on the weekend to see how that goes. And yeah, I mean, feel free to leave in the comments when your favorite time to have a stream would be, so I have some kind of feedback. I've been getting pretty similar numbers every night that I've been doing it, so that's awesome. But yeah, if you have a preferred time, like do you love watching streams on weekends? I don't know. I can't do days because I have a day job making the video games. But and I get home at 7:30, which is Pacific time in the U.S., which is obviously all over the place in other parts of the world. But yeah, so I think generally probably a weeknight around 7:30 is what I'm going to shoot for. But who knows? If I do it on the weekend and I get way bigger numbers, I can do weekends. So anyway, yeah, signing off, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for hanging out and for talking to me. It's super fun, honestly. And oh, there's one more question. White Devil wants to know, do you ever do castings of your work, or do you just paint over the baked sculpt directly? I do a lot of both. I've done, I'm actually working on a molding and casting tutorial for my next series. So look forward to that. Yeah, okay. Signing off. See you guys.